fled what's going on overseas because of the extremism of it. I know more. I mean, I would do the same thing. I would flee the United States if, let's say, a major Christian religion took over, had nothing to do with Jesus. I just don't want to be forced with anything and punished by a group of people that have philosophical differences than me.
Right.
And
of any kind, of any religion, no matter what it is.
That's one of the reasons we do this show. We have to maintain a safe haven of a country where you can just exist without getting killed.
Right.
And everything seems to be going in the wrong direction at this point, which is why I'm speaking up. And I do realize that you have to, enlighten people, or at least cause them to think, so that they can be proactive. If the masses are tolerant, but not willing to bend over and take it forcefully, then that becomes the temperature of our nation. And let me elaborate on that a little bit.
I like that.
If people will stick together and say, you are welcome to be Muslim, but you can't shove it down my throat, then the same thing will happen with Christianity. You can be Christian all you want, but you cannot shove it down my throat. You cannot change my personal world with force. And you can take that over into the scientific atheist and say, you can believe what you want, you can understand what you want, etc. You have that right. But you cannot turn around and euthanize me when I turn 75. And, I'm using extreme cases because some of these people, they do go to extremes. I've dealt with it personally. I'm not making this stuff up. There are people that would gladly have me put to sleep because of what I believe in philosophically. Euthanized, pardon me. And I just think there's much more value to human life than what these people claim.
Right.
So anyway, back to the article. Sharia law, I love that, going off on tangents like that. Thank you. So this Muslim Brotherhood, they ultimately seek to implement Sharia law and to convert or kill every Christian and Jew that doesn't share their faith. And they don't hide that stuff. They're very open about it.
Right.
And again, there may be a couple people within the Muslim Brotherhood that don't believe that.
Sure.
And that is a group of people,
even to that level,
a political party. It should be remembered that while the Muslim Brotherhood was in charge of Egypt, Obama showered them with praise and provided billions of dollars in aid, arms, tanks, and planes taken out of your checks through tax dollars. So, indirectly, but directly, you guys paid for all that stuff. Egypt hasn't forgotten the support offered to the Muslim Brotherhood by Obama, and has now charged Obama and Hillary Clinton for conspiring and collaborating with them and their terrorist activities. President Obama has been named as an accessory to crimes committed by the Muslim Brotherhood in Egypt, with the charge reading that Obama cooperated, incited, and assisted the armed elements of the Muslim Brotherhood in the commission of crimes. Some of the crimes include murder, rape, torture, extortion, bribery, enslavement, and the ethnic cleansing of Egyptian Coptic Christians. According to one of these criminal charges, Hillary Clinton was found to be working with ousted Muslim Brotherhood President Mohammed Morsi's wife, Nagla Mahmoud. I obviously didn't say that right, but and attempting to overthrow the current leader of Egypt, General Abdel Fattah al-Sisi. So Nagla has openly admitted that her relationship with the Clintons dates back to the 1980s, and she has hundreds of record telephone conversations with Hillary and other White House officials. There is also a charge that Obama and Hillary attempted to bribe Muslim Brotherhood with $8 billion to turn over part of the Sinai Peninsula to Hamas in order for them to launch attacks against Israel. If these accusations by Egypt prove true, and remember, listeners, that we're just reading off of a site, which seems quite possible as these allegations have surfaced before from other sources, the only logical solution would be the impeachment, arrest, and imprisonment of Obama for committing treason. And I don't ever think that would happen because
no, of course not.
Not one president can be held accountable for anything he does. If that was the case, then
and that's
Obama would have arrested Bush.
Right, and people have to understand the reason why that's not going to happen, which is just important to get into, is that that's not going to happen because he's doing his job. He's doing his job while he's accomplishing what he was put there to do. Because you have to remember that he wasn't elected; he was selected. He was put there as the face to sell the continuation of the policies of the former administration and administrations before them, just kind of toe the line of their ultimate goals.
And you make a perfect point with that statement because, yes, that is what you voted for. So if you disagree with it, vote differently next time. Right. But I don't think anybody could have foresaw that coming because
I did.
What Obama, well, you could, But what Obama platformed on, and keep in mind, the majority of the people that voted for him had never voted in their life.
Right.
So this was their first time
Right. That's the
tasting
key point,
politics.
isn't it? Yeah.
And they voted for what they heard with their ears, but not what they felt in their heart.
Right.
And
Right.
those of us that are seasoned and weathered in politics, we can kind of see through that stuff. It's
Right.
like, number one, the expectations were unrealistic. I knew that couldn't be done. And Obama in his speech is very, very wise, because he said, as soon as he got in, he claimed he was going to do a lot within the first year. But once he was in, he changed his tone. Well, these things are going to take time, and possibly even into the next presidency. We need more than 8 years to do it. And it's like,
Right. Here
I
we go.
got you.
Yep, laying the groundwork, and that's what they do.
Brilliant.
That's what they're famous for, and that's always one of the common denominators as far as the behavior of politicians, and how you can kind of predict the direction that they're going to go once they're in office, because of the groundwork that they lay. Everything that it's a constant strategy. It's a constant chess game, and when you're, and I hesitate to use this word because I've kind of been trying to work on myself as far as how I deal with people in regards to the present subject matter for politics and things like that, things of that nature. For when it comes to my activism, and I'm trying not to use the term awake so much when I refer to other people as far as being asleep or not being awake, or myself.
So you're breaking
having
away from the
awakened.
stereotypical grammar?
Yeah, I'm trying to get away from it, only because, I was thinking about it, and it kind of implies, it kind of sounds arrogant, I guess, would be the best way to put it, for lack of a better term.
But you know why we use it, right?
I know, of course.
Because that was my experience.
Right.
I felt like I had been asleep.
Well, I wouldn't use it unless I knew what it meant, and
Other people use it, they have no idea what it means.
Right, and the idea, well, then, yeah, that's a good point. But the idea behind it, I guess, I kind of agree with, as far as the lack of individuals, out there who really take the time to look into anything. But the word itself just sounds kind of arrogant, condescending, because at the end of the day, I never want to come across like a know-it-all, like I'm superior in some way. It's because a lot of people, you really can't, because I was thinking about it, and the reason why I kind of came to that conclusion, because a lot of people who aren't aware or awake or whatever, aren't that way, is because they... So what I've discovered is that it's not always laziness.
Fluoride.
It's not always complacency, and it's not always the fluoride. Some people are just genuinely, first of all, just too busy. They have their lives. They're very busy with their families and so on. It's so much information, and a lot of times I believe it's. I used to call it willful ignorance.
In some cases, it is.
And most of the time, it is. Most of the time, it is. But I kind of, when I used to use it in the past, it was a blanket statement for pretty much everyone. And then I started to realize that no, that's not the case. Some people are just in the position where it was nothing that they ever really were introduced to in the first place, to anyone, whether it was family, friends, whatever the case may be. So you kind of can't fault them, because it's not their fault that they didn't look into something they didn't really know about, as far as what it really is.
I agree completely. And that you're just strengthening the opening statement. This episode, that one of the reasons that I got involved in doing this with you and in general is because you want people to just think outside the immediate realm, outside the picture that's directly in front of them, and start looking behind the curtain, start looking behind the scenes, start thinking, how does this policy affect the world around me? And by the way, that article was from Conservative Tribune. We did not make that article up, so if you want to see it for yourself, there is more to it.
But also take it with a grain of salt,
always.
As you should everything, even everything we say.
I honestly don't believe anything I read. I read it out of interest, but unless you see it in action, it's kind of hard to say.
Right.
So maybe Egypt's doing it or not. I haven't seen that. I've lost faith in anything that comes on.
Well, it goes back to what we were just talking
News
about, as far as laying down groundwork.
Right.
See, that's how deep it goes. And that's why some people can get so overwhelmed that they don't even want to. It's like when you get to that level of realizing how deep it goes and how they layer stuff on top of stuff on stuff, you get so overwhelming. You're like, you know what? It's just way too much. I don't.
And then you don't want to look at it at all. Absolutely.
Right. Sure. And you can totally understand that.
On Vince's show, Vince is going to be calling in later in the show. But on Vince's show, he was talking to a friend who moved to the Czech Republic, and he asked him about the news on that end about the West. and we are the West, by the way, if you're listening from America. And he's like, man, honestly, I don't even want to know. It's so frustrating. It's so depressing. I don't even watch it. Why would I want to? It makes me feel sick and angry, etc. So, that's what happens with the layers. But let me enlighten you to something. The people that are the strategy players, that's exactly why we layer. We layer and we create smoke screens, we create divisions, we create so much of a mess that you get stuck and tangled in it, and you never actually get to see what matters.
Yeah, see the forest for the trees. It's kind of like, it kind of reminds me in a way, and I totally don't mean this as a slight, not that she really listens to the show, and I'm talking about my wife now. But she might be listening outside the door for all I know. So
if you hear up, and
you know what happened.
Hopefully you heard that. That was a
But
slap.
that's and it's not just her; it's women in general for the most part. And I'm sorry to sound sexist. It's not not my intention here, but guys, you'll know what I'm talking about if you have a girlfriend or had a girlfriend. And as far as how they argue, is that the argument will be about something, a point, and then the argument will take a lot of different lefts and rights that you aren't even aware of that are coming and really don't have anything to do with the argument directly.
Yep.
Before you know it, you're defending yourself against those left and right turns that you weren't expecting to come and have nothing to do with the point. And before you know it, you lost the point. You forgot what the point was. You were making a point to that point, and now you lost both points. And now she's in control of the conversation.
Great analogy.
And you were originally you were talking about how the argument was about how you can't drive, and now the argument is about that you forgot to bring home tomatoes to the grocery store.
Exactly, and then you're forgiven for the tomatoes, and you forgot that you were even having an argument, and you feel happy again, and that is a wonderful tactic, and that's exactly what happens.
Right.
For instance, what happened to all that radiation that was coming in on the west coast of California? Yeah. Where'd it go?
Right.
Oh, we're so distracted with something new that we totally forgot.
Right.
Those people will probably be dying in 20 years from radioactive poisoning of some sort.
And part of the reason why why that happened, as far as people kind of forgetting about it and letting it go to the wayside, was because, and I don't remember the actual percentage points, people, so I do apologize for that, but if you can look it up for yourself on Google, I'm sure you can find it, and if you do, let us know. But I do know that I guess it was the EPA or whoever it is that runs those standards raised the level of
acceptable radiation.
Yeah, exactly. Right after it happened.
Oh, how nice.
It was this much, and don't worry about it, you're okay. And then when the radiation started showing up on the coast of California, then they were like, oh, well, it's a little bit higher than that, but it's okay. We just adjusted the numbers, and now it's actually a little bit higher, so you're okay.
I have a proposal. Why don't we force anybody who is in Congress and in a position of power to live in the hot spots of the world, so that their mindset will always be on actual making real hope and real change, and that they'll deal with things that actually do matter instead of creating new wars every 5 seconds so that we can justify millions of more dollars and blowing people up. Right. What are your thoughts on that?
Well,
make them deal with what's at home.
Yeah, and that's part of being aware. I guess probably aware would be a less condescending way to say that.
Yeah,
instead
of
saying awake.
You're right.
Or,
I wasn't aware of what was happening.
Right, just being more aware. You kind of start to become able to see the forest for the trees, and you start to see the things that they're not saying, because it's the things they're not saying that they really mean. Just reading between the lines, basically. And once you become exposed and do become aware by researching and studying these things and just kind of observing their behavior, you can see what the ultimate goal is by what your perceived awareness of those of their genuine actions truly are. If you follow what I'm saying, did that make sense at all? Because it sounded kind of convoluted.
It was complicated, but I do gather exactly what you're saying. Yeah, you create illusions through speech and through, I guess I like to call it boogeyman. Mm-hmm. You make a bunch of boogeyman scenarios so that nobody pays attention to what you're doing.
Right.
That's kind of what happens constantly, isn't it?
Yeah.
People use it to keep their children in line.
You see it clearly. It's so funny because I'm always, whenever I'm talking to people about these things, the arguments that'll come against conspiracy theories often are based on emotion rather than historical fact.
Yeah.
For example, and I don't know if we're going to have a bunch of time to really get into this, but this is kind of like an example. Now, I was having a debate. I've had a debate a couple times with a few different people in regards to abortion. Now, I'm not.
Oh, I know where this is going.